I can't believe I even lived for 10 years like that. Domestic violence isn't just the physical bruises or the strangulation, that sort of thing. I mean, it's all terrible, but it comes in so many forms, right? Like the yelling, the threats to your safety, threats of taking your children, all those sorts of things, the manipulation. When they feel like they don't have that power anymore, then they escalate it to something more, punching walls behind my head. The fear was so extreme because the look in his eye just looked like he could kill you just like that. He could just snap my face. His eyes would just go black. Yeah, it was just rage. That's what kept me in so much fear, was just what he could potentially do. And I believed the threats. I believed them.
What's up, beautiful people? It's your favorite light MB in this thing. Welcome to another episode of the Conf1dence Way podcast, where we are shining light on the darkness that is domestic violence and abuse. We got 3 simple goals: educate, empower, and encourage. We are here to educate anyone who does not understand domestic violence, why people abuse, why people stay, why people don't call the police, what's going on. We're going to find out. We're here to empower all of our survivors. This is a safe space to share your story without shame and guilt and no judgment. You hear me? Judgment-free zone. And we're here to encourage anyone who is currently suffering in silence. Listen, you are not alone. You are not crazy. Abuse is not normal. And your feelings are valid. Now let's go ahead and get right in it, because we got to rise above these insecurities. We got to release the burdens of shame and guilt, and we got to revive the God-given power, purpose, and passion, the Conf1dence Way, because we about to light it up. On today's episode, we have Kaz, a beautiful survivor, thriver, philanthropist, and game changer. Welcome to the show, Miss Kaz. How you doing?
Thanks for that amazing introduction. No one's ever called me all those things before in one sentence. So yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you. Because this is going to be, I don't know, like a mirror interview, because we're going to go from talking about your past to where it took you and how you used it to become an aid to someone else who has been experiencing the things that you formerly experienced. So we're just going to dive right in. Dive right in. My first question for you is, how old were you when you first had an abusive or first experienced abuse?
I got married when I was 19, so very young, very naive, but I basically got married because I wanted to, be independent, and I thought it was so growing up. And the guy, there were already problems showing up when I first met my husband. There were already issues showing up. And I was so naive because I was so sheltered as a child. I grew up in a really religious Christian home, very safe family, 2 parents that loved me. You couldn't really say that, because a lot of people say, oh, well, you must have come from a terrible upbringing and then you ended up in this terrible relationship. I had a great family upbringing. But I was very sheltered. I didn't understand. I wasn't taught what things to look out for, what a healthy relationship kind of looked like, apart from what was modeled to me. But I knew that I wanted to do things differently. I never really took on my parents' belief systems, if that makes sense. I kind of always felt that there was something a bit more to it than what they were saying. And I always questioned things, but I didn't know, and I still kind of don't really like formulate those things in perfect words or a scientific approach or any kind of academic approach or anything. It's just I go with how I feel. There was a gut feeling about like that I just didn't want things that way. So of course I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what to expect because I was just so sheltered. So I was with him for 10 years and had 3 children to that first husband. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And you mentioned that even in the beginning that you saw signs that were unhealthy or strange or off. How long did you guys date before you got married?
Probably I want to say like 18 months, 2 years, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think that that had anything to do with rushing into it? Do you feel like that was a good amount of time to kind of get to know his character and you still chose to go ahead despite the sign?
Yeah. It was enough to know, definitely. And even though I remember, oh my gosh, even on my wedding day, um, I was in the limousine driving to the wedding, sitting next to my father, and my dad said, you know, you can change your mind, you can pull out. And I just burst into tears, like, what are you saying? Like, and my sister was like, stop saying that to her. That's an awful thing to say. So yeah, my dad obviously saw the signs as well. And but you know, yeah, I sort of felt, oh, it's a bit too late now. Even the day before the wedding, there was issues with my fiance, yeah, soon to be husband. So yeah, there were signs, but I guess I just thought that it'll all work out. You know, once we're married, you know, we'll just be living this. It'll all be fine. I don't know if I really thought too far. I was pregnant as well when I got married, so I was about 3 months pregnant, and so of course there was that pressure to get married because um, I was going to be a mum and raised in a church, Christian family. You have to be married, have kids, you know, get a daughter around the right way. So yeah, I probably didn't feel like I had too much choice by then anyway.
So before we move on, you said that there were signs and then there's incident before the wedding. So let's start with the signs because there's a lot of times that we see red flags or yellow flags or any kind of flag. And for me, I would see it and then I would be like, it can't be that bad. Or I would kind of, convince myself to either ignore it because I wanted something else so much or to acknowledge it and say, well, that's not really who he is because all these other times he's like this. So, what kind of signs did you see prior to going into a relation or going into a marriage with him?
Yeah. So one of the quite a few. So the main ones were he had an alcohol addiction, and obviously it had obvious issues before we met. That he had an alcohol addiction. He actually had to have an operation because he had been consuming so much alcohol. It must have there was something wrong with his gut, and he was very sick and he had this operation due to alcohol. So that was probably one of the first signs that there's a problem here. But I ignored that thinking, oh, well, that was, that was before me, it's different now. But he was still, and I think he'd given up drinking for a while. So I thought, oh, that's sort of in the past, it's all fine. The other thing was mental health. He didn't seem to have any kind of process or any kind of support available to him for his mental health issues. And so he was raised in a very abusive family, a lot of child abuse in his life. So that was unresolved. So it was unhealed. And he brought all of that into our relationship. He was very shut off. He was very sort of disconnected from himself and others. He was appeared shy, but he was just very disconnected. He didn't really have anything in place for his own mental health. Yeah, so that kind of came out and started leading into our relationship as well, which eventually turned into trigger warning for everyone listening, suicidal thoughts and attempted suicide, in which I found him and I saved him. Yeah, that all kind of started festering and came out in our relationship probably a good sort of 6 years into it. And that happened because I tried to leave. So that's one of the things when we try to leave a relationship, we must be very mindful of a safety plan in place to keep us safe. So fast forward again, I did end up working in a women's refuge, and one of the things that showed up time and time again was threats of suicide when the woman leaves, and or self-harm and things like that. So it is super common. And of course, they can go through with it. I didn't believe that he would, because he threatened so often whenever I wanted to leave or create change. One of the things to go differently, he would threaten suicide. And of course, he waited until I was right there before he attempted in front of me. So then I was able to save his life. So it's just sort of in a way another form of control. Then I felt very trapped. I couldn't leave because I was afraid that if I left, he would do it again. So the relationship carried on for probably another 3 or 4 years before I was able to safely exit. Yeah.
Gracious. Okay. Okay, y'all, we gotta slow down, we gotta unpack, and we gotta back it up. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I think some of the things that people have no understanding, they lack understanding on this, is the control isn't just physical, it's really, really mental. And it's a well played out game of chess. And they are 3 moves ahead of what they're about to do. And they've already anticipated how they're going to respond based off of your reaction to what they do. I want to go back to before you were married. You mentioned that he was disconnected from people. Now, when you say disconnected, do you mean that he just cut himself off and was isolated from friends and family? Did he even have anybody that he called a friend or anybody that he communicated with in his family on the regular basis?
He did, but they were all seemed to be kind of at arm's length. There wasn't any like really close formed friendships. They were kind of work friendships from work, or some family, like some cousins and things like that, but not, they weren't close. They wouldn't, not close like you would expect. Yeah. And because the family was quite dysfunctional and abusive, um, it was very much like a, what can I get out of you? Can you get out of me? That kind of relationship. So there wasn't true connection.
That's why I asked the question. I was wondering if there was a relationship. I was going to ask next if there was a relationship, was it kind of a only when I need you for something type relationship? And this is so interesting to me because the more I get to connect with other people who have experienced the manipulation and the abuse, I've said this every single episode. They're all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
And I married outside of my culture. So I'm originally from New Zealand. I live in Australia now. I have done for 15 years. I actually moved here to escape him, to save my children from him, the ones that I could save. But he's a Pacific Islander, so he's from the island of Samoa. So very different culture to me, and different way things were set up. So that was in itself challenging to accept. So, but then with that, of course, add a layer of all this past childhood trauma that my husband experienced. In a way, there's no one, like, it's no surprise that he acted this way, because he had no way of dealing with that. And of course, what the number one thing that he wanted was control and power, because for somehow that would mean that he would feel a bit more secure if the people around him were controlled by him. And it was it was such a sly, manipulative way of controlling. I know I've been in other relationships where it's been far more external and more. I mean, he was violent, but it wasn't. It was just different. It was very just manipulated me emotionally. Yeah.
Yeah, the manipulation is there because when you were saying that, I'm thinking of a time where it's very subtle, and on the surface, if you're not aware of it, you don't know what's happening. And I think that the longer we're in a relationship, we're able to see the cycle of it, and we're able to kind of get into what they're doing. Like one of the things he would do to me is he would say, oh, we need to clean the bathroom. And he would say we, as if it was just suggested that we're going to do it together. But he was doing it and he expected the response to be me to clean it that day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my ex-husband was very OCD. So he had pretty high expectations of how things were to be cleaned or what needed to be done. Yeah. So of course, all these mental health issues started coming out throughout the relationship with the OCD, and I believe he's on the spectrum, and other mental health issues, I think, as well. But I'm not to know, because I think a lot of this is all undiagnosed, but it's just from what I witnessed being in that relationship with him, So he was he would get upset if things weren't done the way he wanted, or the food wasn't the way he wanted, and he would pack a sad, just be very distant, be very cold. And I was young, so I'm like, what's wrong? What have I done? I would go on and on for days like that. So I'd be like trying to do harder to be a better wife, so that he'd be happy with me.
Did you ever have the thought or verbally express to him that you felt like you would never make him happy, you would never satisfy him?
No, actually, that never kind of crossed my mind. I just felt that I always felt that I could never do enough. I would never be good enough. Yeah. Yeah. But then I also felt that he wasn't good enough either. I felt like he couldn't meet my needs or be good enough for me either. My self-esteem was so low when I met him, that when he asked me to marry him, I just said yes because he asked me. I thought no one else would ask me. I was 19. I thought, oh, I'm going to be up on the shelf, put on the shelf. No one will want me, because if I don't say yes to this guy, that I won't ever get married. And when in my upbringing in a religious household, I was 19 at 1991 or 92, around there, that at that time, getting married, having children, the white picket fence, that was all that you would really aspire to, even though, women have living their own lives and running their careers for years before that. But it was still kind of that old church religion kind of mentality that, where I'm only a valid person if I get married and have children. Then I'm somebody. Sad, hey? So that's the level of my self-worth was that low, that just because he said yes, I said, oh, okay, yeah.
What do you think it was that was causing you to have such low self-esteem before meeting him?
I didn't really have strong women modeled around me. The only women in my life were mums, stay-at-home mums, with their kids, and they were also, good wives in the church. They were doing the right, doing good. They didn't have their own voice. They just did as they were told.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. And you said that he, on multiple occasions, well, he verbally threatened suicide, but he would wait until you were in his presence to actually act on it. So when you were experiencing those instances, before the last time when he actually went through with it, did you feel yourself being sucked in? Like, I know what he's doing. I know why he's doing this, but I still don't want him. I still can't call his bluff because I'm not 100% sure if it's a bluff. Or were you full out believing that if I don't stop him now, I'm going to witness something crazy?
So what happened was, I had left. I think it was like January 3rd. And I had left. I'd stayed at a friend's house. Unbeknownst to me at the time, this friend and my husband were kind of seeing each other. They were, yeah. So I was at her place, and he had rung or sent a message or something that sounded like he was about to attempt suicide. And I said to my friend, oh, he won't do it. I'm just going to ignore it. He's just doing this to hurt me. And she said, I think you better go around and just check. If it hadn't been for her saying that, I don't know what would have happened if he would have or not. I suspect that he waited to hear my car come down the driveway before he went through with it. So yeah, I then had to break windows to get in to save him and things like that. So yeah, I was shocked. Yeah, I didn't expect it. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't expect it. I just didn't think that he would do it because he'd talked about it. We didn't know a lot about suicide back in those days, and why and what. Yeah, I thought that he was just bluffing to kind of, again, control me. Yeah. And I had left him because of the abuse. It was escalating and I just had enough. So, yeah, it was his way of getting me back because I did. I came back because, of course, I felt trapped then. I couldn't leave because then he'd do it again. So he won that one.
So he's abusive, and you came back again because it was another trap. Had you already had all three of your children before he had attempted that time?
No, I just had two kids by then. And then the third one came along. I think we did separate for a year or something like that. And he went into therapy and got some help. And we slowly worked our way back together. But when I was pregnant with the third, then the abuse started again, which is pretty common as well when women are pregnant. That's another high risk time for us when we're in toxic relationships. Yeah. So I left him for good when I was 8 months pregnant with my third. That was the final time I left, and that didn't go without its problems as well. I'm really lucky my dad was supportive, and yeah, there was car chases and all sorts of things going on when I actually finally left. It took a couple of years actually after I left for things to settle down a bit as far as the manipulation and the abuse and just trying to sabotage my well-being and my growth and me being able to properly support my children. Yeah, it cost me a fair bit of money. So
Did he ever use the children after you left as
yeah.
to try to pull you back in or control, even after you realized you weren't coming back, try to control your life from that angle?
So one of the big things that happened when I did leave was how he would then start manipulating the children and trying his best to turn them against me. So he would, try. Of course, the kids would, and this is another thing that happens quite often, is that kids will always side with the abuser. Because if they take the abuser's side, even though inside they love their mama so much and they want to be there for her or even want to try and protect her, because often kids will try and stand in between that abuse as well. But once the relationship's ended, what is pretty typical is that the abuser will then get to work on the kids, and that way he can try and get the kids on his side and try and turn them against the mother. And that way, it's for him, he thinks he's trying to get back at her for leaving. It's like, you're going to be punished now because you left. It's very destructive of those kids, very destructive. He did a good job of doing that. So of course they would come back and they'd be against me. So then I would end up with his abuse coming out of my kids' mouths. The other reason why kids will side with the abuser is it's safer. If I go against what the abuser says, then I'm then at risk of being harmed as well. But if I side with the abuser, then I'm on his side, so I'm a bit safer.
When you left, not the separation, and you're going through the divorce process and everything, are y'all having to go back to court for joint custody, supervised visitations? What did that look like when you left? Because you're saying that when they would come back, so it sounds like he did get the opportunity to spend time with him by himself.
Yeah, so he got weekend visits, so we would have to meet at a halfway point. It was always a problem. he would turn up a bit late, but then it would always be my fault, or he didn't like where we were meeting, so then I'd have to drive further, and then he'd be upset because it was later or whatever the reason. It would always be a problem, and he'd always be angry. He'd either kick my car or try and punch my car or things like that in front of the children. So there was always fear. I had a protection order in place, like a violence restraining order. I used it when I had to, but I had to be careful of how I used that, because sometimes that would even escalate the behavior or the abuse. So, yeah, and that's eventually why I ended up leaving the country. Yeah, and I knew that he wouldn't fight. I knew he didn't have the capacity to know what to do to fight that, or where to go, or the money to do it. So I took a risk, and yeah, I took 2 of the kids out of the country.
Was there any history of you calling the police on him ever, or any paperwork and documentation?
Several times I had called the police on him, yeah.
Tell us about those instances.
Those were all around when it would escalate to violence. So it was very, very threatening kind of violence. It was very intimidating. And then he would drive off and sometimes threaten suicide. So then I would think he's out there somewhere, no one knows where he is, and he's trying to harm himself. So then I would call the police. Or when he was ranting, like yelling, screaming, just inciting fear, yeah, I would call the police then. The thing that I didn't know, and that absolutely breaks my heart more than anything now, is that he was behind the scenes when I couldn't see or didn't know, also threatening my eldest son. So he would be either hiding. I caught him, the day that I caught him is the day around that same week I left for good. So I didn't know that all this was going on, that he would say very harmful things to my kids, and then say, you can't tell mum because then the police will come and take dad away and it would be your fault. So they were holding on to secrets as well. Even the abuse would be passed on to them, where he would hold them up against a wall. Yes, things that he did to me, he started doing to them.
Did you ever call the police when there was physical altercation and they showed up?
Yeah, so yeah, I called the police several times over those years. Yeah. When he was drunk and it went too far, I wouldn't know what to expect then. It would be too unpredictable. And he was very unpredictable. He was one of those people that would say one thing one day and that would be funny. But if it was the next day, that would be not on, and that would be like a reason for violence. Yeah. You were walking on eggshells every day. Yeah. You could hear the car coming up the street and you would get that clenched gut, and you wouldn't know what you were getting. You can and when you're a woman, you can, and you're in that situation, we are so tuned in, like you can tell by the way the car's coming into the driveway what kind of day he's had, before he even stops the car and gets out. You could pick up the feeling. And even though, I wasn't punched to the head, or, some people had really severe violence. Considering his childhood, I would say he probably thinks on his end that he was a much better father and husband than what his dad was. I can't believe I even lived for 10 years like that.
So let's talk about that, because a lot of times people expect, or when they hear the word domestic violence or abuse, it's battery, like full on fist to face, bruises on the back, using whatever they can get their hands on in the house to hurt you, or in, like, you've seen really gruesome instances. But in your case, you're saying it's not like he ever hit you with his fist in your head or anything, but what can you describe what kind of abuse it was, the physical abuse, what it was, and when you called the police, what was their response?
So the abuse was more intimidation. There was times where he would pin me up against a wall or against a door, and he would punch the wall behind me, things like that. He, grabbing, shoving, that kind of thing. But the fear was so extreme because the look in his eye just looked like he could kill you just like that with no going back. He could just snap my face and it would be over. Like the look in his eyes would just go black. Yeah, it was just rage. And that's what scared me so much. That's what kept me in so much fear, was just what he could potentially do. And I believed the threats. I believed them. Domestic violence isn't just the physical bruises, or the strangulation, that sort of thing. But the worst part, I mean, it's all terrible, but it comes in so many forms, right? Like the yelling, the threats to your safety, threats of taking your children, all those sorts of things. And the manipulation, it's all just this power and control. When they feel like they don't have that power anymore, then they escalate it to something more. For some people, the violence starts straight away. For me, it was build up over time and, um, yeah, grabbing, pushing, shoving, yeah, and more just like punching walls behind my head. That was like enough for me to try and get away, call the police, or most of the time I would just leave. Most of the time if I couldn't leave, then I would call the police, but most of the time I would try and get the kids in the car and go.
Trying to leave is hard enough, but trying to
Yeah.
leave with children is exceptionally challenging.
Yeah.
What were the police saying when you showed up and you don't have any kind of physical evidence of abuse? How did those conversations go?
I can't really recall there being too much like positive outcome from calling the police. That was back in the 90s, so it's a lot different now. But then it was sort of like they were there to try and like keep peace, try and like calm the situation down. And they used to hand out those orders where I think they still do, these orders where they have to leave and stay somewhere else for a day. So that kind of gave me a bit of breathing space to decide whether I was going to leave or whether I was going to stay.
I want to address something really quick for people who are in situations and they're confused about it and they don't really know what's happening. Cass has just explained that domestic violence doesn't have to leave a bruise, because I've had conversations with people and it breaks my heart, but I can't say that I'd never thought like this too, is that, well, it's not like he's ever punched me with his fist, or it's not like he's pushed me against the wall, put his hand around my neck and things like that, but he never actually hit me. And so people think that because it hasn't been like a slap or a punch or a kick, the passive aggressiveness isn't abuse. Let's be very clear. That is still abuse. Intimidation is abuse. If you're living with someone and you're afraid to do anything that you would do because of who you are, your character, your joy, you think that you being happy is going to somehow trigger their anger, that's abuse.
All of that. Yeah, all of that. Exactly. The minute you feel unsafe, not able to express your ideas, your thoughts, have control over the way you raise your children, if you have to do things their way. Yeah, all of that. Also, control over finances is the number one domestic violence. If you've got no control over the family income and finances, if you are isolated as well from your friends and family, that's abuse. As sexual abuse, if you can't feel that you can't say no, or you're manipulated and you just think, oh, just give it to him anyway to shut him up. That's abuse.
Girl,
Yeah.
please let these people know it's not talked about enough. The conversations aren't had. The transparency isn't had. And when you're suffering because of someone else's insecurities, you're in the wrong place. And there's nothing that you can do or say that can make someone want to change. What's happening in these situations is they have so much expertise in how to manage the energy that it seems like they're going to do something to get better. And they want you to feel like that because that's the cycle. If it's 100% bad all the time, you're clearly like, okay, this ain't right. But, well, babe, aren't we getting better? Everything is a we when they're the ones causing the issue. It's a we thing. You're drawn into it. Well, I'm getting better. Well, I haven't done this in XYZ. Well, it wasn't like it used to be. It's still there, and it's not going to change until they say, hey, they don't have to tell you, but hey, I'm going to therapy, I'm going to rehab, and if you don't see me making progress in the next however many weeks or months, you need to go. If you can't have a conversation and your partner is not open enough to say that, they're not ready to change for you, and especially not for anybody else, not even for the kids. And I think a lot of times we get caught up, if you're somebody who has children, you think surely, if not for me, for the babies.
Yeah, you think that, right? Yeah. But if they're willing to also then pass that abuse on to the kids, badmouth the mother, that's not a good. And this is the other thing, people say, oh, he needs to have the kids because he wasn't a bad dad, he was just a bad husband. If he was a bad husband, that means he's a bad father. If he has been abusive to you, that's abuse. That's abusing the kids. Like, who, you can't say that he's a good dad, you know. And 100% he will be doing something behind the scenes to manipulate those poor children into taking sides and to trying to go against it. So, when you get your kids back from their weekend with their father and they're playing up and they're being, just out of character for a good week, and then it takes another week to settle them and before they, get back into their routine, chances are there's something going on at dad's house for that to carry on that long. I wish now, looking back, that I had done things differently. One of the key things that would have helped me is if I had more support, because I was really struggling as a single parent as well. I had my eldest son, because of all this abuse, he's neurodivergent, but then add the layer of all this abuse on top of that, he was very difficult and challenging. And we didn't know much about that back then. He wasn't even really diagnosed until my parents took him to Australia when he was about 12.
And what does neurodivergent mean?
He's autistic. Yeah. He's on the spectrum. So he's got ADHD, autism, dyslexia. He needed a lot of extra help and support. And so I needed a lot of extra help and support. And I didn't really have that. I didn't really know where to get that from. And I moved to a small town. So things could have been different. Had I had a tribe of support around me.
That plays a major role in being able to leave safely and being able to have a strategy when you're leaving and being able to feel at least 75% safe after you have left. Because I think people don't understand that people don't leave not because they like the pain or they want to stay there, but they're more afraid of what's going to happen if they leave and they don't have any protection versus what would have happened if they stayed. Because triggering who's already enraged, and now you're threatening to take away the things that they have in life that they can control, you're only making them more angry. And unless you have a safety net and a secure wall to know that when you leave, you're not going to be attacked, it's hard.
Yeah, I 100% would say before leaving, have a plan in place. And even if you decide not to leave, have a safety plan in place for, like, if this happens, then I'm going to do this, this, and this. Have a change of clothes just in the back of the car somewhere. I used to have clients that would hide their documents where the wheel braces in the car. You know how you lift up the boot and you put you've got the spare tire there. They used to hide things in that area of the car. For a spare phone. One of the things that a lot of abusers do is smash up the victim's phone so she can't call for help. There's so many apps on the phone that you can get now that will alert police and tell them your location. You can save, record things, record in your phone where it's safe to do so. So you want to probably download one of those safety apps. So on the surface, it looks like it's a like a meditation app or something. There's so many of them around. I don't know what's available where your listeners are, but just research those apps and download them, because you can record the incidences of abuse in there, so you've got a track record. It helps to keep you sane, because often these abusers will say, no, I didn't say that, no, I didn't do that. So just having that recorded, like, on this date at this time he said this, he said that, it just saves your sanity, and then you're collecting evidence. Also, you want to be able to put money aside. So you've got a plan, you want to put money aside, whether it's just trying to take $20 out of the groceries each week to just start squirreling away a bit of extra money. You want to be telling people that you trust what's really happening, so that when something goes wrong, they've kind of got a bit of a backstory and they can be there for support for you. Also, talking to professionals, whether it's a women's shelter, gathering your information and evidence. You want to find out where you can get some free legal advice, and so that you've got a whole a whole lot of information before you go and act, so you know what you're going to do, what your next steps are. So there's a fair bit to do before you leave. If it's a life and death situation, I mean, call the police and get out straight away. But if you can take your time, if you've lived with it for X amount of years, you're probably pretty good at being able to keep a secret, start getting your homework done, getting some groundwork done before you go. And that way it's so much easier. You'll be able to get a house without them knowing where it is. If you can move to another town, even better. But gathering that evidence is really important, especially if you feel that he's not going to be a safe person to be around for your children. Yeah, that would be really important to do. Any photos you've got of the damage he's done to your property or to yourself. Yeah.
That's good advice. I would piggyback on that. Please take photos. Take photos. Don't tell them you took photos. Hide it in the photo app that looks like a calculator, but you need documentation. Also, if you are at a place where you're leaving, turn your location services off, because a lot of times they've gone into your phone and they've connected you to them and you don't even know it. Homeboy did that. I found it out before I had gotten ready to leave, but I was like, when in the world did this happen? So when you're asleep, they already know your passwords. And if you're in a really bad situation, you can't change them, because then it's like, why did you change your password? And this whole nother situation. But turn your location services off and keep a record of everything, because like Cass said, you don't always have the ability to just up and leave. And if you have an opportunity to prepare to leave, prepare like that. Be prepared. And I think this is a great transition, because you went from living in an abusive relationship for 10 years, right? It was 10 years?
Yeah.
For 10 years, you had 3 kids and you got out. When you got out, you said you didn't have as much support as you wish you had. Did you have support from any services or local women's shelters when you were able to leave?
No, I didn't really tell anybody. I just left because I was pregnant. I was just focused on having this baby. I moved in with my parents, and that helped because he did have some respect for my parents. So it actually helped to be there. gave us some breathing space, and my kids felt safe and loved at mum and dad's. Within a month, I had my baby, and then I stayed there for 3 months, and then I moved to another town. And that's when he started seeing them fortnightly. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to add is not only turn your location settings off on your phone when you're ready to leave, but your children's iPads, you know, those things they will track. If your kids have got a soft toy, just feel it to make sure there's nothing hard inside it where they might have put some kind of something in there to track, because that happens a lot. And if you're concerned about being tracked, go get your car checked. Go to see a mechanic that you trust and tell them that you think there might be some kind of tracking device on your car, and they can find it. They will find it. So after I left, I didn't have any support. The thing is, 2 years after that, I met somebody else and I thought, this is going to be different. He's a completely different person. He was very like outgoing. He was funny. He had really good relationships with his family. He had 4 daughters. I thought this is going to be different. But he was probably, I would say he was probably a narcissist. Yeah. He was very, very manipulative and controlling. Yeah. Very jealous, very, and I thought the jealousy at first was, oh, he must really love me. You know, he's jealous if I'm talking to somebody else. But it was insane, the level of jealousy. It was like he would accuse me of sleeping with his brother. You know, things that were weird like that. Like I would just be bathing his brother's kids in the bath while the brother's wife was cooking dinner. We'd be around there having a barbecue. And I go, I'll bath the kids for bed for you. The brother, the kid's dad, would come into the bathroom with a towel or something, you know, in the kids' clothes. And then that was it. Like my partner would then think that I was then having an affair with his brother over that. Like just things that didn't make sense. It was the level of jealousy was unreal. So it just got worse and worse. Yeah. So we had an on and off relationship for a good 8 years before it ended. Yeah. And it was all very controlling, manipulative again. There wasn't violence at all. And the intimidation wasn't the same level as the first husband. So I thought, oh, it's so much better. You know, and I thought this must be kind of normal. Yeah, there were so many things there with the level of intimidation or the abuse. Yeah, it was just the manipulation and the jealousy. Yeah, was a different level of control.
Now, 8 years is a long time. That's a long time. So explain how, because I mean, guys, you have to understand that manipulation is like, it's this genius playbook. And if you're not fully secure and confident in who you are, you're susceptible to it. So how do you go from what you were in for 10 years, and then you got 2 years to start your healing journey, to really start focusing on your kids and focusing on you? Who are you? Who is your character? Who is your nature? Then you find this guy who's so loving, has 4 kids. How does that become an on again, off again relationship for 8 years when you see the signs?
Because, you know, when you're in that cycle, like you talked about before, the cycle of abuse. So there was these lovely periods of this honeymoon period where we were having a good time. Like he was so much fun. He was very charismatic. He was the life of the party. And we got along so well. Like it was great. I don't know. It was sort of like something would change in him. He was out for himself, we'll put it that way. He did things like we went to buy a house together, and last minute, where he drove me to the real estate and handed me some paperwork and said, you need to just sign this paperwork. And I just signed it, didn't read it. And then I just remember seeing a bit on the bottom of the form, or something on that form alerted me that I was actually signing my name off the house. So he purchased this house in just his name, with just him on it. So that, yeah, I was like taken aback by that. It's like, are we together? Are we not? Like, you're buying a house that I'm living in, but just in your name? So he would do some things like that. Like he would tell people that he paid for things when it was me that paid for. He was very orientated around who owns what and who paid for what. Like it was very much like that's mine, or that, you know what I mean?
When people show you who they are, you have to believe them. It's easy
Yeah,
to fall for the Prince Charming, oh, he's so much better than the last guy. But if you don't, or girl, or she's so much better than the last woman. If you don't know your standards, your boundaries, if you don't know what it is that you want and what you won't accept, you can fall for someone's charm. You can fall for someone's good days, but you got to focus on the bad days, because those are the days that show you how someone operates under stress, and we know that we live in a life that's full of pressure and stress. So if you're snapping because of something, they're telling you who you are, and you don't, it allows you to be more alert so that you're not falling into the cycle that we've all got. Anyone who's been in an abusive or domestic relationship, we've all been caught up in that cycle. Because for me, it was just so much like, it was so much hope, because I knew his potential. I could see how great he could really be if he could overcome this, but nobody's going to be able to overcome their demons if they can't heal from the trauma from their past.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The problem is that if we are looking at the external things to fix us, then we're going to be drawing from all these different people, or drawing from this potential partner, that, oh, this and he's going to help me to feel safe and secure and nurtured and loved, and then he's going to make everything better again. And that's the problem. If you're at any point, looking back, I would never have thought that was me. I thought, no, I'm very independent, I'm very strong, I know what I want. I was very determined and focused with a lot of things in my life. But if I really was honest with myself, I was really looking at these other people to kind of save me. So I repeated the cycle 3 times, would you believe? I ended up in a marriage as well after this 8-year guy. And by this marriage, I knew that I knew the mistakes that I was making. And I think I lasted 2 years, maybe 3 years with him before I left and divorced him. But I had really started fixing myself during that marriage. I knew that, I mean, I was very broken when he walked in like he was Prince Charming, because I just come off the bat of this 8-year relationship. He came in like he was going to save me, and he was going to. But as soon as he could see that I was actually stronger than what I appeared, that I was really building myself up, he didn't like that, because then he couldn't save me. So things were very toxic in that relationship from that point, when I was getting my shit together. So that's when I was getting the therapy. I did so much work on myself. I ended up becoming a therapist just to try and help myself. And then I went to work in a women's refuge, and that's where I could really help people that were in trauma. The funny thing is, as soon as I left him, I got some amazing job opportunities. I was given probably 2 or 3 pay rises in a 6-month period. I had saved a bunch of money, and I was able to purchase a home in my own name. And that was everything to me, because that meant I could never be kicked out of home again. I wasn't going to be sleeping in a car ever again. I had safety and security for me and my kids. So the problem starts with our focus being outside of us. The answer is on bringing that focus back to our precious soul and asking ourselves, what is it that I need, and how can I love and support and care for myself to provide those things that I need, and learn what those techniques are to be able to do that. It takes us to bring that focus back to us, because when we're in abusive relationships, all of our focus is on that abuser. It has to be to keep safe. We have to know exactly what's going on with them, if they're happy, they're unhappy, if they're a bit tense, whatever's going on, if they're hungry, if they're whatever, so that we can sort of mitigate or that abuse, right? So when we are healing, we want to bring that focus 100% back to us. So we're not going to be on the defensive anymore. You know how many times, they say something, they go, oh, but I didn't do that. Oh, I didn't mean that, and how they twist your words and all that sort of thing. Being on the defensive, it takes you away from yourself. So even cutting that out and just bring that love, bring that focus back to you, heal your past, rebuild that concept of yourself, right? And that way you can start to be more of an aligned match for a healthy relationship. Because me coming out of unhealthy, I'm just an unhealthy person right now. Looking outside, I become a toxic person because I'm looking outside of myself for who's going to meet my needs, who's going to fix up what that last guy broke, right? I need to bring that focus back to me. By healing my trauma, by healing those inner wounds, I can then become a more healthier version of myself, where then I've risen my vibration up to be more of an aligned match for a healthy person. There's no good men out there. We're all the good men. You can't see them because your frequency's not on that level.
Talk that talk, y'all. Okay, because when she just laid it out. She just laid it out, how someone can go from an abusive relationship to another abusive relationship to another abusive relationship is because we're seeking something external. And honestly, it's because when you have to do the internal work, that's hard work. And it's ugly and it hurts. And it feels like you're just digging open wounds that you thought were healed, but they're just covered on the surface. And it's not just in relationships either. It's in almost any kind of relationship in life, any kind of job or anything in life. If you're constantly seeking your happiness or your joy outside of yourself, you're constantly going to be chasing after the wind and you're not going to catch anything. You have to point the focus back on you. You have to do the work, and you got to forgive yourself for all of the stupid mistakes that you made in the past.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you said, you have to be able to forgive yourself. So the steps, what I found, because I went all to the therapy, I read all the books, I was speaking to all the different people, the services and things like that. If it wasn't in my intimate relationships, it was in workplaces. I would end up in a job with a toxic boss. What I found was that there were 3 things that I needed to do to heal. And the first thing I had to do was to rewire the trauma, because a lot of people don't get that in order to heal the past, we need to do the grieving, right? All the forgiveness, all the grieving for the life that I didn't have and the love that I didn't get, all those years that were lost, the way that I treated myself, it wasn't kind. And most people don't want to look at this, because without letting go, the trauma stays with us. Trauma is stored in the body. And what happens is we suppress it, and I was frozen in that grief for years, and I didn't even know it. And it showed up in my life as stagnancy, as being disconnected. I didn't even understand emotions. I didn't even know what feelings were until I was in my 40s. I didn't know what all my feelings were. I had shoved them all down so deep at this point because I was just surviving. Depression, and eventually it creates inflammation and disease. And I ended up on a cancer journey from there as well. So what it does is it makes you stay in the past. And when you're staying in the past, you're just recreating it over and over again. And you can't heal what you don't feel, right? So true. The only way through is to really release this buildup of pain. And for many of us, we've managed to just not feel at all anymore, right? And so underneath all those feelings that you don't want to feel, underneath all of the suffering, that's where your joy is. That's where your aliveness is. That's your vitality, your laughter, your love for life, and your love for others. So healing is such a sacred process. It can be painful, but it is such a sacred process. And when you do the healing work, you remember your soul again, and you can heal your heart and your connection to God and all living things. So that was the first thing I had to do. The second thing is the energetic clearing. I had to, if you feel stuck in any area of your life and you feel like you've got this invisible block that's stopping you, you're wondering like, why can I not hold on to my money? Why can I not hold on to a good relationship? Right? If you have got something that's stopping you from experiencing abundance and happiness and peace and joy and love in your life, then you need to experience an energy clearing and healing. So it's almost like a Christmas tree. When you have a Christmas tree and one of the lights stops working, and then it stops the next light from working because there's a blockage in that flow of those lights lighting up. It's sort of stopping that chain of that glow. So during the energetic clearing and unblocking and healing, these are energetically activating you. So what we're doing is we are removing the biggest energy blocks that hold you back from igniting you into your wholeness. So that's what I ultimately do now. I help people to clear these energetic blocks and to rewire the trauma because it becomes a neurological process in our brains that we keep reliving over and over again. So we want to stop that and rewire it, clear our energetic system. And from there, we then move into a vibration where life starts happening for you and you get really catapulted into a life of abundance and joy and clarity and peace. That's the way life should be. It's not about the past anymore. When you're on a healing journey, it's not about the past. We don't want to be reliving that. We want to turn the page to the next chapter that's waiting. So it's not only possible. When you do the work, it's inevitable that you then get to release those blocks that hold you back. And you kind of become a whole different person. And that's what you want to be. You want to be a whole different person. You don't want to be the person that finds yourself in these toxic situations all the time. And when you walk away as the best person, it's in all the best ways, because the next portion or the next step on that journey is to remove those biggest blocks that are holding you back from that are lowering your vibration, so that when you've done the energetic work, your vibration then shoots up. So when your vibration is higher, those problems don't exist anymore. You don't see them. They immediately solve themselves because you're in a higher state of vibration. And when your vibration's high, there's nothing you can't create. There's no block you can't break through because you're not looking outside of yourself to fix it. You're the medicine, you're the guru, and you start realizing your power within you to fix you and to fix your life and to create the goodness for yourself and for your kids. So I can confidently say when you do the work, you're not going to be the same person afterwards in all the best ways. So the third thing you want to do is, by this stage, right, by this stage you're free from the past. Your energy within you is pretty clear, and all that was tying you down, it's not there anymore. And this means that your soul is now the fullest expression of love into the world, and you've got unique gifts that somebody else doesn't have, but you can't see those when you're in it because you're in survival. So at this stage, there's no more, but by this stage, you're free and you're healed and you're an enlightened being. So we now get to discover more about your soul's truth, and you get to hone your craft and your gifts, because by now you're ready to share this with the world. You're free. It ignites a fire within you. It gives you so much joy and peace and love to share your soul's gift with the world. So, there's just nothing more abundant than being all of who you came here to be. And you can't be all of who you are when you don't know who you are. You can't be all of who you are when you've got somebody trying to stifle your light. So when you've done the healing work, you've gone through the rewiring of the trauma, you've done the energetic clearing, you're now ready to be the fullest expression of your soul. And it's so liberating and elevated.
Come on. So I just want to put this in, I want to put this in some bite-sized Kit Kats for y'all. Everything she just said, and correct me if I'm wrong, in order to get yourself out of that cycle, whatever cycle you're in life that keeps taking you back to situations that you know you don't want to be in, you don't deserve to be in, you don't like being in there, you have to forgive yourself. So you have to heal yourself. You have to heal from the past through forgiveness. You need to, once you do that, you've got to release. You forgive, you release the energy. And guys, if you don't believe in energy, you just don't believe in energy. But energy, scientific or religious, energy is present in both conversations. You have to release the blocks. You have to release, and then you have to discover who you were created to be, what you were created to do, and then go all out. It's a simple concept, but it's not easy work. Forgiveness, releasing, and discovery is what I just heard, Cass. Is that kind of online with what you're saying now?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Release. You want to, when I say rewire the trauma, you're right. A lot of that is releasing and the grieving of the person that you wanted to be that you couldn't be, or what you needed that you never got. And that comes in so many forms. Probably starts off as anger, right? So you've got to go through all the emotions, and you want to know a process of how to go through that. So in my program that I walk women through, I show them a very easy 4-step process, because we've never been told how to handle our big emotions. And if we've gone through a lot of trauma, we probably don't even have a riverbank wide enough to hold all of that. It's huge. The trauma is huge to manage. So if we have a process where we can know what's going on inside of us, recognize what's happening inside of our bodies, where we're feeling this inflammation, where we're feeling the pain, the emotional pain, what sort of thoughts we're experiencing when we're going through that. How do we just let that be in our body? How do we give it its time in the day, rather than what we normally do, as we either spit it out onto somebody else as a frustration or anger or resentment, or we lash out, or we suppress it. And when we're suppressing it, we're denying ourselves that experience of understanding where it is in our body, what's going on, what our thoughts are, where this, and being able to release it. What we're doing is pushing it down, and when we're pushing it down, it's creating inflammation, and that's an energy in itself. And talking about energy, our body is energy. We're more energy than we are matter. We have something like 3 trillion cells in our body. And if you look at a cell, if you open that cell and break it all down, at the end of the day, it comes from energy. It's fired. It's an electrical charge that is firing different cells. So we are energy. If you go and get a scan, what do they use to get a CAT scan or PT scan, whatever? That's energy, picking up on the energy inside your body. And I found all this out when I went through cancer. So I went through a journey of cancer. So it's a whole other story in that in itself. So I had a year to sit in bed sick. I couldn't even make it to the letterbox without being absolutely exhausted. It was so hard. So I started just intuitively, I thought I started listening to a lot of podcasts. I started reading a lot of books about healing the body. I went through chemotherapy and radiation therapy and all of that. So I spent a year in bed every day meditating and doing energy clearings on my body. That shifted so much for me and made me so much more aware of how I can heal my life and how I can heal my body. Even just a year ago, not 2024, 2023 in April, I was going through this neuropathy. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was eventually diagnosed with neuropathy. I could barely take a step into my front door. So my legs were just like they were numb, or it was like nerve pain as well. It was just the weirdest thing. And it went on for about 6 months before it was just getting worse and worse. And the doctors told me I would eventually end up in a wheelchair. And I was referred to a orthopedic surgeon. As soon as I was told that, I thought, right, I've got to do something here. This is not quite right. Like, I'm not going to end up in a wheelchair. No way. So I started going back to all my energy healings and clearings. I did a full energetic cleanse. I went to Bali for a week and just focused on clearing my energy system and healing myself. Well, what came up for me, all these synchronicities of the universe started appearing. I was told by God, I guess, that my gut health was no good. I knew that my gut health was no good. And okay, well, what do I do about it? I started following the breadcrumbs. I was given a trail to follow the trail. And I went on this protocol. I was showing like I just couldn't ignore it. It was popping up everywhere, all over my social media. Friends were talking about this gut health stuff. So I thought, okay, this must be it. So I took this stuff. It was meant to be 7 weeks or 8 weeks or something. 5 days, I was completely healed. So these things happen when you are more aligned, when you know how to heal yourself. You can heal yourself from just about anything, unless it's in your karma to go through that. I think things happen to us for reasons, and nothing in my life I can look back and say I regret. Sure, I could have done things differently if I knew better, but I can say that everything that happened in my life has made me who I am today, and it's given me so many tools. And I probably love myself more for it as well. I appreciate who I am. So yeah, when we know how to heal ourselves, we know the tools, we know the techniques, we get to create our realities. We get to create life. We are creators. We're born creators.
I have two more questions for you. You mentioned that you went for a week in Bali. So what would you suggest or recommend to someone who can't just up and pick up and go do that? How can they start or submerge themselves into the energy healing and cleansing process where they are?
Easy. So all you need to do is dedicate some time every day to doing either, you get to choose whether you want to do this through a breath. I combine breath work and energy healing together. I feel like it's the most powerful concoction. So get familiar with your own energy. Get familiar with your own breath. Feel what's happening inside of your body. Take some time to meditate every day. It doesn't, I've got one meditation that's 3 minutes, and I give it out to all of my clients because it's the intention. You set the intention every day that I'm going to be my own healer. I'm going to sit here and really focus on my inner world and my healing, bringing that focus back to you. You can even just start running your hand. We've got thousands of meridian points over our body. We all have them in our hands. We're all healers. You've got the same meridian points and chakras as I do. So the minute you start feeling the energetic pull of your own system, and it takes practice, it's like anything. If you do it every day, you're going to start noticing things. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And what I started noticing when I was doing my energy healings on myself was I thought, oh, this is really good. It's really, I can actually feel things shifting inside of me. I feel so much lighter by the end of it. I feel free. I feel higher. I feel great. So I thought, oh, start helping other people. So I started doing energy healings on other people. And what started happening was I started seeing these outlines like a scan, like an x-ray. I started seeing outline of people's organs, and I have no medical background whatsoever. I have no clue. I had to go and buy a chart with all the body parts and there, so I could tell people, oh, your spleen, I just kind of shifted some energy there, and they would say, oh, well, that's interesting because I've got some trouble in that area, or I've seen the doctor and I've got this thing wrong with my lungs or my kidneys, because I could see like an x-ray. So the more I have not been trained, I don't know anything about that. I just do what I feel intuitively led to do. And the more you do it, the more you follow those inclinations, those inspirations from your soul, the more the spirit will start giving you more. The more you're gonna like grow in that area. But you've got to take the step and do it. You've got to take the one step forward and just do it. Following your intuition, what feels good for you. If you feel silly doing it, who cares? It's only you and you. You know, you're only doing it for yourself. Start carving out some time every day to get familiar with your energy. I take my clients through a process of protecting your energy first, clearing the auric field, and then we go into the inside of our bodies and we clean and clear that system so that we are an open channel. And when you're an open channel, that's when you can receive more. You can receive more abundance. You can receive more love. And then you can give out more because you're receiving more. So it becomes this beautiful natural flow.
Now, I know there's going to be some people that are out here that are skeptical about it and everything, and that's perfectly fine. But this is just another opportunity to try things. And if it doesn't work for you, you're nowhere worse off than what you were, right?
So I came from that place too. I was skeptical. I was raised in a very strict religious family, so it actually took quite a bit for me to overcome some of those belief systems about it. But then, I mean, Jesus healed lots of people, and we're made in the likeness of God. We have this ability. That's what we were given, this ability to be able to heal ourselves. We don't need to put so much trust and faith in everything else around us. We can trust ourselves, and that's where it all starts from. When we can truly love and accept ourselves for everything and all of who we are, even our negative sides, we can just love on that too. And that gives us so much liberation and freedom. And what it does is it actually releases these blocks that are inside of us just through loving and accepting ourselves. So the more we suppress, the more we have all these like big boulders that are in our rivers, like it's stopping this flow of energy within us. And every culture you go to, whether you want to call it Shakti, whether you want to call it Chi energy, or whether you call it spirit, we have this energy within us. And the more we have these issues that are blocking us, that we have got unresolved, these traumas, they slow down, they block this river. And of course, that's when we start feeling stagnant and stuck, depressed, anxious.
Thank you for that. And you may have already answered this question because with everything you said, it was advice. But what would you give advice to anyone who is either currently in an abusive relationship or they've just come out and they feel so lost, so confused, so scared? What is your advice to them to encourage them that it's going to be all right? It's only a season and you got this.
Well, just that. That's perfect. That's good advice. It's just a season. You know, it gets better. It gets better. This is not the end of your life. This is the beginning. This is the very start. You're going to look back on this and you're going to be like, man, I was so strong. I was so courageous. I'm so brave. I'm amazing. Yeah, you're going to look back and just see what an amazing goddess that you truly are. So just take one step. Just take one step. That's all it takes. You know, that just 1 degree shift in your direction is going to set you on another degree shift. So just focus on that one step ahead. Breathe in love, you know, and exhale any of those tensions. Just release that. Make sure you have support around you. You've got a bit of homework to do if you've just left or you're planning on leaving. Get some support around you. Do some homework. Keep strong. Journal if you need to journal. Release it in some ways. In fact, while you're in it, I wouldn't actually recommend diving deep into healing. You need to get safe first. Your first priority is to be safe. And when you're safe, then you can start doing the healing work. So focus on your survival of getting safe, getting to a safe place. And then when you're out, make sure you've got a good support system around you. Get yourself into some sort of therapy that you feel works for you. Do some healing work on yourself. just focus on you, bring all that focus and love back to you.
Wow. Cass, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, with your love, with your light, all the way from the land down under. I don't know where that accent came from, and it clearly probably wasn't sounding like someone from
it did good.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to share, to be in this space with you, to have this conversation with you, and to commune with you so that we can build this community together to let people know, hey, you're not alone. You're not crazy. Abuse isn't normal, and your feelings are valid. And that's what we're here to do. Y'all, this has been another amazing episode with an amazing guest, Cass, of the Conf1dence Way podcast. And you guys got to remember, we are here to rise above insecurities, to release the burdens of shame and guilt, and to revive our God-given power, purpose, and passion. The Conf1dence Way, you know what it is. She gone. Confetti, 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 confetti.